2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10. Oh, I've heard of that. To keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations, there was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, and difficulties. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong. We're not really talking about the scriptures, but every week we're going to start with this 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10 as a reminder about how we've gotten from should we be amazed by Jesus' grace to grace in action and grace being displayed. But I would tell you that when you read this, please take a look and put a special, perhaps, weight on weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and difficulties. Because all of these, in some ways, encompass most of our social interactions that aren't so great.
As I look at that in the New American Standard, those words, insults, distresses, persecutions, difficulties, do not seem to go with the word that precedes them, content.
Correct.
We don't seem to be content with that.
Correct.
And that, I was going to share this and decided not to, but now that we see this, I'm going to have to share this. Thursday night, I went to go take Michaela to class, her martial arts class. And you may remember that it was a howling storm. It was just terrible. So we get ready to leave, and my truck stalls out at the end of the driveway. At the end of the driveway, before you even get out on the street. I go to turn the key, and again, no sound. Not even a click. Nothing. I'm going, oh, what was? Well, we were able to, 2 things. Number one, we had a backup vehicle. We were able to push that out of the way and get the other vehicle and go. But number 2, it stalled in the very place we wanted it to be,
right
at home. And so we can. I was not upset. I was not stressed. I was literally the contentment you were talking about. Go to another vehicle and we'll take care of that later. So we can do that. We can have that contentment, but it's not necessarily natural for everybody.
I appreciate that, God, because we are so American, we don't recognize that in the midst of our injury, we are more than blessed compared to other folks in the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the wonderful things about having my son just come back from Europe, to be able to see the neat, that the world is a big, huge place with wonderful opportunities, but then also come back and have an appreciation for the kind of country that this is. And it's going to make it easier to have discussions with him going forward, to be able to recognize that our worst days are significantly better than other people around the country. And why I'm saying that to you is this, is, folks, your injury, your insult, your hardship is not necessarily a death sentence like it is in the Middle East, like it is in China, like it is where folks are persecuted not only for their faith, but sometimes for the fact they don't like who's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So finding contentment as an American should be a better and easier practice for us than Paul's.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Paul's going up against the emperor. He's going up against Rome. You guys right now are going against perhaps your livelihood and being canceled on Facebook right now.
Mm-hmm.
So making the time and finding it to be content in insults, in injury, in difficulties, it's another gear.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one that we won't get to unless we're kind of like what Sarah says, we're not practicing it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you only know how to drive an automatic, you're missing out on a whole bunch of new speeds and a whole ability to manage your driving, right? Okay. That's what we're looking at here. And that's why I just want to help emphasize that there's a whole lot packed in to these 4 verses, these 5 verses, and we're going to get there. But I want you to see that's why we're emphasizing them, because when we take a look at some of the folks the characters that are in our scripture, we're going to recognize that they did the thing that was most comfortable and the thing that was in their lane, and they did do the thing that Paul describes that he needed to do here. So the first question that's up this week is, it's going to pop on the big screen. It says, what do you do when you feel the need to disagree? Because we talked about the question before that, read how. What's the question before that?
How do you know when you disagree with someone, something, or some concept?
Right, and we talked about that, and some of the answers gave us. Can you put that on the screen again? Thank you. So, how do you know when you disagree with someone, something, or some concept? When it rubs me the wrong way, when it goes against my values, when I know it's incorrect, when it makes me or others feel uncomfortable, when I don't like what they have to say, when I don't like how they say something. We spent a little time on that how at the end last week, talking about saying things in love, right? When sometimes the fact that you say it really is in love, but sometimes when we're talking about folks who are a little bit more mama bearish, they want you to hug and squeeze them and say, you have mucus on your nose, as opposed to saying you got mucus on your nose, and how you say it is not necessarily important. It's that you say it, because other than that, I'm walking around with mucus on my nose. So, have to see my wife for that discussion, because she's always saying, you need to say love. I did. Did say love. I said it. So the next question that follows that up is, so what do you do now that you've disagreed? What do you do when you feel the need to disagree? What's that look like for you?
The first response that I have is what I call audience analysis. With whom do I disagree? And how do I approach them? Can I approach them? Am I talking about somebody that, you mentioned livelihood, that has that in their hand? Am I talking about somebody who is a violent person? Am I talking about somebody who has a gun in their hand? You know, what is the scenario? What is the situation? And be real honest, sometimes I will use that to temper my response to that disagreeable situation.
But the idea being that you would like to have a conversation with them,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Because, I mean, you'd like to have a conversation so that you can see each other's point of view. Okay, that's where I went with this. But we should also be able to have that discussion and maintain composure and even friendship. I'm just, you want to have that discussion. At least I've tried that before and got shut down. But, if you disagree with someone, okay, that's fine. But why do you disagree? And tell me what you think.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I think. Maybe we can meet in the middle, right? You could have a screaming contest, but it doesn't get you anywhere.
That's true.
But, I know. But I mean, we should always be open to what somebody has to say.
Wow. Wow.
I would hear why.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
Wow.
Have I been kicked out? Can I go outside now?
Your own son says that's ridiculous. Why are you saying that, Daniel?
Let's get it right.
What's your proof and evidence that you're right?
Doesn't matter.
Source, just trust
And
me.
that is today's climate.
Sure.
That is today's climate.
Where'd you get your bachelor's in? Doesn't matter. I got it.
Correct. I'm right because I'm right. It doesn't matter why I don't have any proof or evidence to support it. And you better agree with the fact that he's right.
So the other aspect of that too is, if we do have a discussion, more times than not in today's world, it's not about the subject matter that brought the discussion up in the first place. Now it's about attacking the individual person as the person, not the subject matter.
Yep. Correct.
That's okay.
This old forensics guy back there.
Yeah, we have that good friend of ours down at the beach who, because of political, that kind of ideology, can't see his grandchildren because his kids are so radically
Liberal.
one way left, and he's very right wing. Can't see his grandchildren. It's heartbreaking.
There's a whole thing though that's nothing to do with politics.
Yes, sir.
And I frankly, lots of times think if I'm going to engage with somebody I disagree with, I like what you said, but I'll take it at a little different angle. And I kind of have to make an assessment of how entrenched they are.
Okay.
Because I even find this in church circles that There are times at the point I am in my life that I won't have that discussion. Not because I'm afraid, not because I don't think that I'm right. I just don't want to deal with it because I'm going to run into a brick wall.
Yeah, this wasted money.
Huh?
It's wasted breath. Yeah, it's pointless.
I mean, I almost feel like that's kind of what Jesus was talking about with pearls before swine.
Yeah.
In some ways, you know. So
Well, sometimes though, somebody may appear that they're open for discussion, but then when you bring up some counterpoints, then that brick wall comes up, okay? And then you're like, well, I thought you wanted to talk about this. No, don't want to talk about it. Yeah, you need to go talk to somebody else about that. I'm like, well, then why did you ask? Why did you give me this information?
It's a difference between most people, and it's kind of what Chris was saying, is most people, when you have a discussion with them, they're coming at you from a point of an emotional response to whatever the issue is. And it doesn't even, a lot of times it's political, but it doesn't have to be, because they still argue the same way no matter what. So what it ends up being is that they come at you and they think they feel strong about their position. They feel strongly about it because it's, again, a feeling. And so I always try to argue from a perspective of logic, and here's some information and here's some facts and here's why I believe this. And then when you start to present them with that facts, well, that's no longer, that doesn't make them feel good. And then that's why they got to shut it down, because I don't want to think about that fact that you just brought up that totally shoots down what I'm saying. It doesn't make me feel good, so I don't want to hear it.
it's kind of the same issue that we're having in our world today when it comes to the minimum wage discussion. It's not a value statement about you as a person. It's about the thing that you do. But people have so wedded everything to their identity,
Right.
that they can't separate that. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter. Right. It doesn't matter. You made me feel bad about myself. Yep. I don't know. I think we're going off on a tangent.
No, but you guys are talking about kind of discussion elements. The question is broader. It says, what do you do? What do you do when you disagree? And so Sarah said, like, in a perfect world, an ideal world, to have a discussion. Okay, what else do you do?
Well,
Sometimes you run away.
and Bruce,
Sometimes you do.
Yes.
Sometimes you run away because it's like, and because if somebody brings it up, you're like, well, I know what I believe,
Yep.
but I don't exactly know why or how I can tell you why. So rather than talk through it, let's just not engage. I'm backing away.
Sure.
I'm running away.
yeah, and Bruce's evaluation of the, and if this is a word, infringement of the individual is a valid one too, because I'll be honest with you, on the way in, before we had to exit 295, we got passed by a motorcycle that was flying an American flag and a Christian flag.
Yep.
And I think it was a motorcyclist we knew. This was, and because we're being recorded, I'm not going to say any names, but this was one that had a particular bent toward a particular version of scripture.
Okay.
Okay? And you talked about church crowds. I need to tell you, that's a big discussion that happens. Friday night, we were at a parents' meeting for Michaela's trip coming up. And the pastor said, okay, bring a Bible. And he specifically said, not King James.
Whoa.
I'm like, that's a little different, but I can get there. I can understand that. But so we ended up in a discussion in the van on the way here about the version. King James is not a bad version.
No, it's just stilted language.
It's not comfortable for the 21st century American. And might not even be great for the 21st century Englishman, for all I know. But you get into these discussions, and this particular motorcyclist was one of those that would have been pretty well entrenched and would have said, no, I don't think we have anything further to discuss. And I'm just not, like Sarah said, I'm just not interested in being confused with facts.
Okay. I like, hopefully Steve doesn't punch me out later, but I like Sarah, and then I'm going to have more to that, because leaving that by itself would get me punched by Steve.
I like Sarah too.
That's fine, you can like it.
Okay, but then you have to add other stuff too.
I don't.
Okay, and you're you. So I like Sarah when she is concerned about the thought bubble. Because when Sarah's kind of in revelatory mode, Sarah says stuff and then she has, oops.
Did I say that out loud?
Exactly. And I love when she gets there because that is the reality of where a lot of church people are. Is that there's a whole lot of stuff that they really would like to say, but they've got their governors on most of the time and you don't get to see that. And that's what I love about Sarah is that she always is ready with the oops because the oops is the reality, right? And she said, a lot of times we disagree, we run away. Let me tell you, this one happens more than the other one that Sarah said. Sarah said, I ideally would like to talk with someone. Let me give you a silly example and then jump back to how this makes sense. In Uvalde, Texas, there was something going on in the school system that everybody agreed with. And in part, there were a lot of folks who would like to have gone in and to talk and perhaps an interaction with the government, and they didn't go into the building, perhaps in a timely enough fashion, even though some of them were trained to. And so I'm suggesting to you strongly that when there's a situation sometimes we find ourselves in that's disagreeable, we don't necessarily want to have a discussion. We don't want to work that out. We want to run away. Let me give you a church one that's even better. Watch this, because I'm going to see some of your heads go buck. They're going to nod with me on this. Watch this. You're all guilty. A lot of us are guilty of this. Jehovah's Witnesses or the Mormons come to your door. Thank you very much, Chris.
He talks to
And
us.
you're a nutcase, and I love you.
Yes.
They don't come to my.
On the no-fly list.
When they show up or they get in your space and or sometimes even if you go downtown in Richmond, you'll encounter the guys with the bow ties at the traffic centers. Those are other guys who do a different kind of indoctrination. Those are black Muslims.
That's our neighborhood.
That's Louis' gang.
Correct. And they will meet you with, do you understand the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? And you encounter that and you go, exit stage left. Because I also think that one of the things that we do when we find ourselves in situations that are disagreeable is I'm getting out of this. I would almost suggest most Americans choose this route. And if not most Americans, most church people choose this route.
And if they don't necessarily choose the runaway mode, they choose the don't bring it up mode.
That is also, that's the stealth mode.
Right. They're like, they get the thought like, I should probably say something. No. No.
Yes.
So they just avoid the situation.
Right.
So instead of just letting you run away, they say, I'm not going to put myself there.
Right?
So, dumb question,
Sure.
because I'm so good at those. When we do one of those two, are we justifying it as being tolerant?
No,
No.
I don't think, no.
Okay.
No. It's the extreme of this is what happened back in the early 70s with Mary Jo Kopechne.
Yep.
The woman was murdered outside of her apartment building. All the neighbors heard it. Nobody called the police. Nobody did anything. I don't want to become involved.
Correct.
And that's, I'm guilty of that a lot of the time. It's just like, kind of what you were talking about earlier. I don't have time for this right now.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm very guilty of that.
every time you guys have said that, I've got the wise words of Simon Garfunkel going through my mind.
Which looks on.
Slow down, you move too fast.
Oh, you gotta make the morning last. Okay.
Let's feel it.
Feeling good.
That's
59th Street, Bridgestone.
59th Street, Bridgestone. Yep.
So I would suggest to you that this permeates a lot of your church buildings.
And church people.
By association, because they're inside the steeple building where all the people live.
We've had it. We've had it in the extreme.
Yes,
There's a
sir.
guy in prison because of that now, or maybe not.
Yes, sir.
But
Yes,
he's in prison now.
yes.
And
Some of us could have gotten involved differently to say, we understand there's messiness in your life. How can we crowd you in a positive way? Thank you for that, because I took that on the chin
that hurts, man.
for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
And that may be
Talk
good.
about it on here.
Yeah, that may be good. But what you're hearing from Brother Bruce,
I'll share it.
he said that sometimes our inability to meddle, our inability to be bothered with the trivialities of the things of your life that I disagree with, it's too messy for me, so I just don't even want to go there. And then what happens is we have superficial relationships with the people that we hang out with on those special days in the special holy building. And we don't have all things in common. And we don't know how to meet in the marketplace and break bread together because we're always rushing to go someplace else. We don't take time to have a discussion about the things that I find disagreeable. And let me throw this out for you too. You've heard me say this before, and maybe some of you have seen me do this. I try to train, at least myself personally, so I'm not really offended by anything that you have to say. Even if you point at me and say, now, unless you have a noose and say, I'm coming to your house to lynch you, okay? You can tell me that you're a Klansman to my face. In fact, when Ellen and I first moved here, one of the silly things that Ellen stopped me from doing is David Duke, you understand him, was here as the old Grand Wizard, and he was doing a seminar in Chesterfield on white supremacy. I wanted to go.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
I planned to go. And Ellen said, I don't think as a young father, as a new father, your butt needs to be there. Because in order for me to really disagree, I gotta know what they're saying. So I gotta be there. Even if I'm the lone tan dude in the crowd going, excuse me, David.
I'm your cousin.
I'm your cousin Preston, baby. Mama said one day we'd be reunited. So I'm trying to say to you, if you get offended easily, this is not going to work for you because disagreement is what you walk around feeling and people you keep at arm's length.
So what happens when you've done it? You've meddled.
Yep.
Use your word meddle.
Yes.
And you've meddled a couple times. And those have blown up. Yes, right? And so then we're like, why do I even want to do that?
Right on, sister.
I'm just asking.
You're right on. This is a real life discussion. You're right on there. Look. Brother Bruce, I know that that's happened for you guys. Honey, you know that, look, there's a time when you hurt and you go, this. Not only does this feel terrible and below, but it's with people that said that they love Jesus.
Yeah.
And they're treating me like this.
Or loved you.
That's
I'm just saying.
that's the first thing that hurt.
Right, because you got to start there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so but then those situations just explode and you're like, yeah, I'm never going to do that again.
So here's this thing, and Brother Gene makes reference to this, and I've heard Brother Bruce make reference to this. And here's the thing, and unfortunately, it may take getting older, or it may take this happening repeatedly. The things of this earth will grow strangely dim because it's more important for you to put yourself out there than it is for you to be shrinking violent. Even though sometimes the payback feels like it's. So let me pause there. What do you do when you disagree? That's the question here. Goes beyond just wanting to talk. Sometimes it's, I'm going to avoid it.
Well, sometimes I have a sort of a reverse problem. Is I'm willing to engage with someone, especially if I already know what they're talking, what they're discussing, and I know why they're wrong.
Right.
And if I don't, then I'm just going to ask questions.
Right.
And that doesn't really challenge very many people. You just come across as this guy's trying to understand what I believe. So then I can go back later and go, okay, I know this doesn't make sense somewhere, and he said this. Let me research this and try to figure out what those answers are. But if it's a topic that I already know what the answers are, at that point, I kind of want to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to win.
Yeah.
And so at some point, what happens to that is as we discussed earlier, some people have that emotional response and they're like, okay, yeah, you're hitting me with that fact. So that might make sense, but no. And then just want to stop. And then I get frustrated because I'm like, but don't you see?
I'm hammering this point home.
There's a different kind of winning though.
Exactly.
Yeah, the other kind of winning is being able to continue the discussion on a friendly level.
That's not important.
Oh, I think there's another win even in top of that, because I know where you come from. I mean, there's no guile, selfishness behind that win, because the win is for them to be corrected,
Right.
and they win, and then we move on. Right. I mean
Yeah.
because you prefaced all that by saying, when it's something I know about, and I'm gonna say that I think I know you well enough that if you think you know it, you can back it up. It's not an opinion. It's the truth. It's a fact. And so at that point, you want a brother, right? I mean, that's the idea, right? You want a brother. You want him over. So the win is a win for everybody. And I think that's where maybe we missed this, is it's, my win should be your win.
Right.
Not my win and your win and their win. And we got a bunch of winners, but we're all losers. So I kind of dig where you're coming from. But I think there's another part to it. And I kind of went one way with it, but what you said kind of triggered something in my head. It's so often, I think, if we don't engage somebody when we disagree, then it does become entrenched. Then it does become calcified. And that's something that I'm dealing with now, is I didn't deal with something in my own church about 2 years ago that they were vastly wrong about, not theologically speaking, but more, well, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's not theological. It's not a theological thing. But I've kind of watched that demonstrate itself now for a while. And now it's festered, if you will. And now to fix it, I'm going to have to kind of tear down some stuff, So I think, instead of, you might go do research, right? But you're going to come back quick,
Right.
and deal with it,
And then they're
not let it get all blown out.
Yeah, if you don't say anything, then they just think, well, they're on board with that.
Right. Tacit
That's
approval.
where I am.
Right. Tacit approval is a big thing in our world.
Folks, sometimes we use the skill set that Sarah referred to and that Steve referred to better outside of the church walls.
Yeah.
We get really freakishly scared inside the church doors of having people upset with us. And I would tell you that if folks understand and embody who Jesus is, and they're led, they're guided, they're directed by the Holy Spirit, they might have their feelings hurt, but they're going to get over that, because ultimately eternity is more important than the way I feel right now. We haven't done a good job, leaders, helping our church people understand that. And then that's why just weird stuff festers in the church. I was listening to somebody, if it wasn't Jerry, talk about the animosity sometimes that happens at church business meetings. You want to watch disagreements and fire? You will watch people argue about the pews changing from brown to gray. Let alone start to talk about moving the building or closing the building. You will have disagreements, arguments, and people that even begin to hate, and to the point where then they decide to relocate because somebody hurt their feelings in the church business meeting.
Yep. Don't talk about why the carpet in the sanctuary is 2 different colors, because that was the compromise they came to.
And don't dare talk about moving the organ.
Exactly.
The organ has been there since the founding of the building in 1732.
Yeah, or eliminating it altogether.
Oh, no. Oh.
So, yeah.
Christianity 101 class.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, oh, yeah, I've been a Christian for 20 years. Shit, tell me, I don't know what it is. Sorry. Steve's better. Sorry.
That's part of the reason Steve said, or introducing Christianity 101 into your church, because people have been believers for years and they know what Christianity is. Who are you to tell them?
Woo! I'll give you the teacher guide.
Yeah,
Verse 5.
that's a class you got to go into with a flak jacket on.
Yeah.
What else do you do when you disagree with someone?
When I first read that question, my first thought was, apart from audience analysis, like I said, sometimes if there's just so entrenched, I go and do my own thing anyway.
Okay.
Whether or not I agree, I do what I think is best.
Okay.
And I'm specifically talking about the work environment.
Okay. Let me throw out a couple of other thoughts for you and see if these inspire either your discourse or thinking. Like Sarah said, I want to have a discussion. I think that's one that is, I think maybe we all have that initially, and then we consider the cost and we go, not doing that. So then we choose kind of the other course that Sarah suggested, which is, I'm just going to run away. Okay. Now I have this third, but I'm gonna actually give you the fourth one next because it kind of piggybacks here. So don't show it up yet. Don't put it up there yet. So I think that a lot of not just church people, but a lot of folks are like this one too. But with social media, this has made this less displayed. I silently protest. When I disagree with something, some concept or something, I'm not saying about it, but inside, I'm smiling, but inside, I'm punching you out.
So you go passive aggressive.
Yes, sir. I would believe this happens a whole lot when the pastor says the thing you don't want him to say. When the leadership of the church, let me tell you, here's one. Thou shalt not cohabitate because you're trying on each other and seeing if you're going to be compatible. See how that plays in today's churches. And then, if you want to have a discussion about the stars, because sometimes it's important to wade in with pop culture to help you see the church people actually idolize some of these folks. You guys know who Nick Cannon is?
Yeah.
Nick Cannon is popular because he's got like 8 kids.
8 million kids.
He's got like 8 million kids, but 16 million baby moms. And he thinks that that's normal. And then perhaps the other flip side of that is Steve Harvey and the kid everybody is christening the new Superman. Creed kid.
Oh, Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan.
Jordan, yeah.
So they have been a couple that has been touted for the past 18 months.
What?
Oh, huge.
What?
Yeah, Steve Harvey talks about the two of them being together. So that he and Steve Harvey's daughter are together.
Oh,
Steve
I'm going to.
Sorry, man. You missed it. I said a piece because I was like,
Steve, don't laugh aloud that way. I guess I thought you guys were on the bridge with me.
I was not on the bridge.
Steve Harvey has a daughter,
Perpendicular bridge next to
and his
it.
daughter is dating Michael B. Jordan.
okay.
There you go.
Wow, I was losing faith there. Steve Harvey's kind of an institution.
Well, that's also kind of what I'm talking to. Because if you listen, he's kind of Oprah-esque. He talks a lot about God, right?
Yeah.
Talks sometimes about Jesus, but has also been touting his daughter dating this guy. Well, they just broke up.
Yep.
Now, if I'm the dad in that situation, my thoughts are my daughter has been in some ways
Defiled.
if I'm the dad. And when do I show up on this young man's doorstep and literally beat all the fluids out of him? So I'm saying that to you kind of because it's a popular cultural thing that people cohabitate and have kids and buy houses and stuff without being committed culturally, and we're okay with that. But you go and tell that to your church people who are practicing. That will make them silently leave.
They go underground.
Well, they will probably not like you, and then they go someplace else where they are accepted with their lifestyle, and they're not being potentially forced to no longer do that.
We had it. We had it when I was here.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just all pretty wink, wink, nudge, nudge stuff, right?
Yes. Yep, some of us waded into that and said, shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, you did.
Was that you, Preston?
Boy, is he the song?
He's pretty much the whole song.
Okay. He's so wholesome. I appreciate it.
Look, sometimes it's not the pastor or the leader's job to go, excuse me, that's stupid. Sometimes it's Nate's job, who's closer to this, to go, you shouldn't be doing that. That's stupid. I'm the wrong guy to do that. But if Nate's not going to do it and he's close enough, somebody should go and do it.
Yeah.
So our churches are full of, it's got to come from that guy, or it's got to come from that guy.
Well, because if it comes from somebody else, it doesn't turn the scrutiny back on you.
That's correct. So that's why you've got to bring, you brought Bubble. That's why you got to come and bring your stuff wide open and go, this is me. Because then you don't have to put the genie back in the bottle when somebody says, well, you did that. Yeah, I did. And the consequences weren't great. And I've learned from it. So I'm trying to help you not to avoid the same David and Bathsheba junk.
Not to avoid.
He meant to say avoid,
I thought so.
but he
He was emphasizing it in the Greek.
I'm going to Jazz. The last item on this, and to consider is this one. I find this one funny. And some of you are going to nod when you see this one. Sometimes when I disagree, I find other people, because I take a poll, find other people who agree with me, and take a stand with my team against that situation, that concept, that individual.
Oh, yeah.
It's easier with a team.
Sure it is.
It's easier with a team.
And that works in churches a lot.
Yes, it does.
It's done a lot.
Yes.
Called splits.
Yes. And when we want to unfairly and incorrectly practice Matthew 18, right? Church discipleship, that's kind of what we do. And one of the things I learned from the guy who's visiting from the foreign land he lives in is the first thing it tells you to do is confront the person with a brother or sister.
Your favorite part.
Right. Well, but I've learned from that, right? Because here's the thing. When you do that, because here's the cool thing. The Bible really is chock full of wisdom. So let's say Daniel's having the rough time telling everybody, I'm right, you don't know anything. And I need to say, Daniel, stop saying you're not right. So what I don't do is I don't go to Gene, and we're 80 years old, and we go, that young whippersnapper is always saying that he's right. I hate when he says I'm right. I find the youngest whippersnapper who knows him, that guy, and I say, would you come with me and talk to your brother? Because he's a weirdo.
Stacking the deck.
Stacking the deck in his favor, not mine.
Thanks.
Oh,
And that's what we get wrong.
yeah.
When we want to confront somebody, take the like-minded guy, the 80-year-old guy, and say, let's go beat him up with our cane. As opposed to his brother, who's going to at least be able to hear objectively what it is that needs to be said to him. So let me back off and give you a little pause there. Commentary. What do you do when you disagree? That's what we're talking about.
I think you've made such a valid point. I don't want it to be missed. And that is when you do that confrontation, which I know you love to do, you do it in such a way that sets the party that's being intervened toward, you do it in such a way that they're more at ease because you're bringing somebody that they're suspecting would at least be objective, if not in their same camp. I think that's a wise maneuver that we miss. We try to take a gang with us that's going to, like you said, beat them up in our favor rather than bringing somebody that can actually
Advocate for them.
advocate for them. That's a great way to put that. And now the Matthew 18, Matthew 5, those passages, what we really sometimes forget is there's the word sin in there.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean he hurt my feelings or she upset me or something like that. It is, we're talking about a Bible thing there. If it's something like, I didn't like the way they said that, well, get over it, move on.
Sorry.
Well, you touched on, I had a thought, but you touched on something. I had somebody come up to me many years ago now and say, Pastor, you offended me. And I looked right at him. I said, maybe you need to not be so easily offended.
Uh-huh.
That didn't go over very well at all. But I mean, this person was always offended by people, and I just was kind of tired of I was just tired of the game, right? And it's like, get over it, move on.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to keep on offending you. If that offended you, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm not going to apologize every time I do this. And that was not met well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I didn't do the thing that I was thinking about when you said about disagreeing. And I guess this is a Sunday school answer, but I know that if I'm doing it right, I think I kind of do two other things. One, I pray about it before I go to them.
Mm-hmm.
I've been praying a lot about this one. I told you guys I'm letting fester because I got a feeling it's going to blow up. I'm in the hurt locker. I'm going in, baby. I know it. But two, and this blows up in my face more often than I like to admit, but I try to go with scripture. Not as a weapon, but as a teaching tool. And that's when I run into
But
Yeah, but.
Yeah, but, oh my.
And, but I feel like, I feel like if I go with the right heart attitude and the word of God, and I bathe it in prayer, if I get nothing coming back at me, then I've done my best.
correct,
And I'm out.
correct.
Yeah.
I'm out. And now, Lord, I've given it to you. And that often blows up too, but you do what you do, right? So that's more Sunday school answer than you needed.
No, that's right on, because that's going to create hardships. That's going to create difficulties. That's going to create insults. People are going to be saying things about, that's the guy who. And Paul is saying, I revel in that stuff because even in that situation, Jesus gets the glory. You got to be working on the things of this earth growing strangely dim, right? That's why that's there, because that's not the values of this world. So for you to go, I'm going to be okay with people insulting me because I just prayed and stood on the word of God to be able to support this point, and now they hate my guts. That's not the times that we're living in, folks. So the things of this earth, the values of this earth, the culture of this earth, the climate of this earth has got to start becoming strangely dim in the light of eternity and what honors the Lord. And that's why, folks, shifting out of our normal lane is a real tough concept because we're comfortable where we are. That's why I really like this Paul's thorn in the flesh when it gets thoroughly investigated, because it's just a whole lot here. And it's neat that I've heard numerous sermons over the past. It's funny because we're working on this. I've probably heard 5 sermons on this. Usually I have Ellen in the car, and I'm getting terrible because I say this thing, I'm going, we're teaching it way better than this guy. We're teaching it way better than this guy just preached it. Because he just glosses over that whole thorn in the flesh. You've got to take a look at all the characteristics here, because this is turning your back on what's most comfortable and what feels the best in the times in which you're living. This is finding, when I want to talk about contentment, I look at Brother Gene changing his tire in the rain when somebody went, you're kind of a weirdo. Why are you singing a song? Because Brother Gene realized that even changing my car in the rain, I own a car. I have a spare. I'm going to be able to get home, and I have a car. All of those things bring kind of contentment if you are able to recognize where you could not be.
And you know what? That's so real, because when Thursday night, Michaela and I are both going, well, it broke in the very best place. It could have been on the interstate. It could have been all the way at the dojo. It could have been really a bad situation. And we were going, it couldn't have broken down any better. Plus, it was kind of on a hill, so it was easy to push. We were just, rejoicing in the situation, even though it was kind of crummy. And I knew I was going to have to come back and diagnose the thing and figure it out, because it really, at first I thought, the folks who fixed it didn't fix it right. And it didn't turn out to be there at all. But at any rate, it was just old. It's 25 years old next month. So anyway, but yes, when you are able to look beyond the current situation and look at what could have been, how bad it could have been, you can really get excited.
Yes, sir. And I thank you for that, because Americans are jaded with the American experience, and typically our gestalt, the things that make us, that through nurture and nature that make us what we are all Americanized.
Yeah.
We don't know how to put ourselves really in the shoes of other inhabitants across this planet, to just go that we really, of all people that almost ever lived, should be able to be content, whether we're abased or whether we have more than we need.
Mm-hmm.
But we are the richest empire that's ever been. Certainly the most charitable as well. So, thank you guys for indulging. And hopefully this next question will be, it's almost like commandment number 5. This one is going to straddle, and you're going to see, why are we talking about this? So I'll read the question aloud and have you start thinking about it for next week, because hopefully it will get us thinking more about this 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10, and help you to understand when we start going into the discussions about grace in action, grace display, why it makes sense. So the next question we're going to be focusing on next week, and I'll have a brief story and I'll quit, is how do you think disagreement relates to disobedience? How do you think disagreement relates to disobedience? Okay, that's gonna help us pivot. And I'm going to end with this and then leave you open for comments and stuff like that before we move into music. By the way, great to see all your smiling faces and your and the places where you are. So thanks for hanging out and joining us this week. I ask about our Jesus encounters on a weekly basis because the more practice we get, the more perhaps encouraged we'll be to want to tell them and even tell, and listen, I got to pat Sarah on the back. Sarah's campaign last week wasn't so successful. This is where we need to know about it.
But she had a campaign.
Yes. She was looking to say, I got my marching orders, but I'm standing right here in place. So,
I got my steps in.
but it wasn't toward any particular camp except my own. This is where we need to process that I was on campaign, but I didn't have anybody to spar with. Didn't have any victories or went in the camp, and I got completely decimated. This is where we do this.
You know what? You just said something that struck me. The Baptist world, SBCB and others have always been about being on mission. But you know what? I like your expression better. Being on campaign. Because that's war talk, if I may say that.
Ephesians 6.
Yeah, I'm saying. I just want to let you know that struck me. I heard it. I like it. I don't think we need to be so much on mission as much as we need to be on campaign.
Why put on the whole spiritual armor if we're not with that?
Exactly right. Why bother?
Right?
Just go way down.
Yes. This is the place to talk about your failed campaigns. That's what we do when we meet.
I love it.
This is the place to talk about the victories that you have. This is the place to share that there's someone in my family with a coma and we need to get somebody in there talking, maybe other than me and my brothers, because we're having no impact. Can I send another scout in to go do that? This is the place where we do this, because when you lead is when you do church. When you be the church. Right now, we're just we're giving glory for the fact that all of us continue to march together this week. We're giving thanks to the captain of the Lord's Guard.
Amen.
In the ways that we do that. But then we're going to go back out and look to take the next step up.
Amen. Do it again.
I'm glad that Brother Gene said that sometimes Baptists and some other groups are missional. Yeah, you want me to make a face? I think Daniel saw me making the face. It was kind of like a big stink face. And here's why big stink face. We say we're on mission, but all that means is we have the la-di-da, the Hanna-Barbera, whatever funds there are. We give money to those people, and they on mission, and we hear mission report, we go, we had mission to a bunch of people.
And the Hanna-Barbera. I love that. That was
You
great.
people are wrong. You people are wrong.
I'm sorry. That was so nonsense.
Report you to the authorities.
Doesn't matter. He's reported now.
I'm forwarding that.
That's the word.
To agencies.
Southern Baptists are going to come after you, dude.
Come on.
I have reasons now, man.
Sit there.
Yeah, right around the corner. So to sort of talk about how we think the job of missions is not ours. This is a sermon from a sermon excerpt that I heard at the beginning. And this is what the pastor who was delivering the sermon started with. He said, we've got a pretty successful church. And he said that there was a person on our mission board who'd been working with us for several years. And they said that potentially they didn't know, they were in church all their life, but they didn't know if they were really saved. This is after hearing, I guess, one of the pastor's sermons. And so, and this was a young lady, I guess. The young lady was hanging out with the pastor's wife. And the young lady heard this new sermon, and she turned to the pastor's wife and said this again. I don't really know that I'm saved. I've been in church all my life. And so the pastor's wife then said, well, why don't we talk some more after church? So after church, she and the young lady talked. And then her advice at the end was, maybe there really is something here. I think I need to have you talk to my husband. Thank you, dear. You guys catching it?
She's handing off as opposed to handling.
Why?
Exactly.
Why?
It was flipped.
She just missed an opportunity.
That's right.
Why? And now there may be scheduling snafus that don't happen because he's a big muckety muck wherever he is and making sure they get a chance to do one-on-one, be able to talk about her specific spiritual needs. May not happen and they get put off. How come she didn't handle it when she was in her presence?
Yep.
That's the road and the world we live in as church people, folks. I need to get you to the God. You're supposed to be the God.
That means equipping everybody. Imagine that.
Folks, that's what we aim to do. That's what we try to do when we gather together on Sundays. It's not James' job. It's not Bruce's job. It's not Steve's job. It's your job.